Okay, Ron.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order, and I'm gonna turn it over to Gary Bennett to get us started.
Thank you, Chair Hawkins. First order of business tonight is to elect our budget committee chair. Do we have any nominations?
I would love to nominate Derek Thomas.
Second.
Are there any further nominations? Okay, hearing no further nominations for the committee chair, we need to vote on this. All in favor of Derek Thomas sitting as budget committee chair tonight, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
All right, well, thank you, Gary. Welcome, everyone. As the budget committee chair, I'd like to walk through the role of the budget committee. The role of the budget committee is a means for the public to participate in the budget process. We review the proposed budget. Wait for those slides to come up here. Here we go. Review the proposed budget. And then we basically receive the budget message and budget document for review. And then we listen to comments from the citizens as well in reviewing the budget. Our actions are basically to review the budget at major fund and function levels and ensure that a budget's in line with the district goals. We ensure that the budget is reasonable and justifiable based on the audited years of prior audited years of financials and forecast for the upcoming year. We approve the budget and set the tax rate. Now, there are a few functions that are outside the scope of the budget committee, and these include things such as salaries and benefits, contract terms and staffing levels, service or program office offerings, and policies of the school. Any questions on that? Okay, seeing none, turn over to you to run the meeting.
Okay, outstanding. Let's go the right direction here. Oh, sorry, this is the right piece of the slide. So the next thing up was Dr. Downs wanted to talk a little bit about strategic plan and strategic design and how that fits into our budget.
You want me to start talking first of overall budget message?
Yes, we missed the budget message. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
No, that is the time for the budget message. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Let's talk about the budget message, then the strategic design. It's clearly on the agenda. My apologies.
Well, thank you, everyone, and it's really nice to see you. For those who are all here on a volunteer basis, we really appreciate it. Appreciate you making time and energy and the preparation. And it's just good to see everyone have a beautiful evening here in Sherwood. So thank you, Chair, as well, for your duties tonight. Thank you. So I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about our budget tonight because this is a labor of work that is done by a large group of people, and it's based and anchored in our shared vision question, which, you know, how do we inspire a joyful community of learners? At the core of what you'll hear from me, planned, redundant message is that I want happy kids and happy adults to be going someplace that they want to be, and that includes every aspect of our district. A big belief of mine is there is not one job bigger or more important than another. They are all different in this adventure. So you know, can't be kids to school, they don't go. If you can't feed them, maybe it's their only meal of the day. If you can't take care of many other facets, like it's a really miss. And so I'm excited that we continue to be anchored in this. Really want us to let you know that we are in a good space, and I'm thankful for that. And it's a lot of hard work to get there. And what tonight you're going to hopefully hear is a little of that journey and that roadmap. But we are entering into the second year of our biennium. And though you noticed and seen an increase in what the state has allocated for us for the second year, it's a 4% increase, it still falls unfortunately short of what our anticipated needs are. And you'll hear a little bit about that, but a lot of this is very similar to your personal life, where there's just rising costs associated. And we are trying to work really hard as a team to make sure that we are being good stewards. And that's why you're here. And that's why the Fiscal Accountability Group has been really helpful. I'm appreciative of that. So as we think about this, I want to highlight a couple things that you're going to know tonight. There's a lot that we could talk about. But when we talk about making progress on kind of where we've been, I want to highlight on a couple of things that our team has worked hard and led by Marlene and many others, Gary and our executive team and our principals and our teaching and learning department and directors have all supported staff who really put this work in motion. So a few things I want to talk about to put some of our strategic plan into action. One is we continue to have a strong multi-tiered support system for students. We really want to, continue to make that a cornerstone of our work, and many of you are familiar with what we have done. But this year, we also successfully implemented a map growth data tool that was new for us. That our kids and our staff are going to be benefiting over the next several years. It's for grades K through 8, and we also will continue to support leading into high school as well. A continued investment in literacy. It is just, we really want to get back to the basics here of what we're doing and why we're here. And when we talk about investing in literacy this year, one thing I'd like to highlight is we have started the high dosage tutoring, and I know our board is well familiar with this, but maybe not everyone in the room. But we are currently supporting 120 students with giving kind of intensive interventions and additional supports to make sure that they actually can learn to read. And then we continue to be blessed by the levy and by the support of the Sherwood community. It's just an incredible support. This year it currently supports around 56 full-time employees for us. And it's a wonderful financial support by our community. They sure show it in other ways, but that is one way that they set us up for success. While we still are very similar to other, everywhere actually in the nation, we do see some enrollment trends. We do have a smaller number of students being born in our zip codes that feed into Sherwood. And then we do see growth over the course of the cohort. So while we have a larger senior class that graduates, smaller kindergarten that is being born right now, we do grow in between those ages, and we will continue to see that growth. Tonight, you're also going to hear about some financial realities. We always want to be just real about some things that we're planning for and planning ahead. And then last, I just want to say, without our partnership, we have a strong partnership in the city with our city partners, with community, with businesses, with parent groups, and it is just makes the district really special. And I've had an opportunity to work in some other districts as well, and I really just appreciate Sherwood. And so I'm excited tonight. There's a lot here, a lot we're going to get to, but I just wanted to do a little welcome and say thank you for the time, thank you for this. And I also want to just highlight, as we kick the night off, Gary Bennett and his team just do a phenomenal job for us. And I wanted to say thank you, to preemptively say thank you, because I'm not going to forget later either, but thank you, Gary, for your incredible hard work and the hours and hours that you put into not just tonight, but it's getting us to where we're at. So.
Okay. Moving through this with some of the things that he talked about. You want to talk about that now? Okay, well, sorry.
Yeah, you jumped me ahead of that. That was good.
Yeah.
I just want to.
I'm a little bit off. I'm on.
Good. That's keeping everybody on their toes.
Yeah, I just like making sure everybody else is paying attention.
You're ready.
I think we're all ready. I think the chair is ready for it. I just wanted to highlight, this is something the board was very supportive of, as we last year we built a 5-year strategic plan, and it's exciting to be in year 1 of that and to start looking at some specifics. And so I'm going to highlight a couple of things, but just to show for folks, 5-year strategic plan, and we built it together with community input, students, staff, and the board. And we use this as a guiding document. We will continue to refine and get better at using it, by the way, as well. I'm going to own that. We will continue to prioritize and match how we're spending with what happens. And so I want to highlight a couple of things as we talk about the strategic plan itself. As we finish this, I get so excited to think about a Sherwood kid graduating, and we think about, what do we want from that kid? Think about your kid or a neighbor or whatever. I want them to graduate with these things. These are what we're called portrait of a student. So we want them to be, you know, lifelong learners, engaged citizens, collaborative, communicative, resilient, responsible, happy, healthy. I like to say we want them to graduate happy, healthy, and with a plan. Right? We don't always want to dictate what that plan is, but we want them to have a plan. And so I get really excited. And how do we measure this? So we're trying to think of ways to measure this. I'm going to highlight a couple things. One, some of these ways that we measure things are like, who's taking the ACT and AP courses? What are we tracking there? What are they doing post-secondary? What are they doing when they leave here? Are they going on to trades, a 2-year, 4-year? What are they pursuing? So we're learning and doing a better job of trying to track that. We're looking at participation data for co-curricular and community service that builds that community, the engaged citizen. We're looking at their math and language arts performance as measured. We have a measurement in the state that's a normalized, you know, we call it the OSAS. We're looking at behaviors, like how are students doing in schools. We're looking at 9th grade on track. At the end of their 9th grade, do they have the credits to be on track to graduate on time? We're looking at graduation data. We're looking at second-year college data. And then with, you know, we try to get information from kids. It's really hard to quantify, but we're trying to ask them, how are you doing? What do you need? What are we doing that would be helpful? What are we not doing that, you know, like, what do you need? Those are fun, you know, so we're trying to get some of that student survey data. We continue to work and prioritize attendance. We believe that you need to be there. And our staff work incredibly hard and to try to make sure that we can really support kids to be there in school. One of the things I noted, or that you talked about, or that I talked about earlier, was this, you know, thinking about what are we doing that are actually matching our strategic priorities. So I know you see that up there. I've talked about most of that. What I want to let you know is I'll give you an example of something that's like a strategic priority. Like earlier today, this room looked different because we're doing AP testing up here. So why do we invest in AP testing? You know, we help subsidize and bring the cost down of the test for the kids and the families. We help pay for we pay for the proctors, we pay for subs. There's a large cost associated with that. But when I go outside on the lawn and talk to, you know, 90 kids that have prepped for the whole year, and they're a little nervous, they're excited, they're like, what's my number again? What am I ready for? Like, what do you know is if a kid takes an AP class in K school, there's some benefits to it. Number one, they graduate college on time. That the research does absolutely show that. And it isn't just research from the College Board who runs APs. This is independent research. We also know that they stay on track with courses better. There's a weird thing that says it doesn't, there's some of it where if they score 3 or higher on the test, they jump to higher level college courses immediately. But there's another data point that says it doesn't matter what they score because of the process of being in that college level course for the year, they are more prepared, and maybe a mental thing as well. So they do better and they like to push themselves. They may not even go on to a 4-year college, maybe do something different, but that experience has strengthened their stamina and their confidence. So it's an example of something why we do, like, there's a cost to us, but we believe there's a great return on that academic investment that we can make. And that's why it's a part of our strategic priority. And that's just one example, but I just wanted to kind of highlight that. So thanks again for the support of the strategic design and the plan, and as it keeps growing and as we keep moving into it, we will keep doing a good job of trying to highlight why we do what we do.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to us about that and for keeping me on track. Okay, so now we'll move into the financial projections and just get into some of the technical aspects of the budget. So a lot of this we talked about at our meeting in April, but I'll just kind of quickly go through it. The levies producing, as Dr. Downs said, more than we forecast by a little bit, and that has provided amazing stability and it prevented significant reductions. I can't imagine what the district would look like without it. So thank you again to our voters. We're looking at a general fund balance increase. And on top of that, setting aside some reserves for capital projects. We'll talk about what those are later, but like turf fields, curriculum purchases, things of that nature that we have to do. Challenges, you can see those up on the screen up there. All things we talked about in some detail at our last meeting. And I think the big theme is just generally costs are rising faster than revenues, just like we're all seeing in our own budgets at home, for the most part. So, this is an important graph. This is one that I've shown the board before, a few iterations of, and one thing I've said and I'll continue to say is, whether it's me or someone else sitting in this chair, I think you should see this slide a couple times a year. Once in the spring when you're developing a budget, and once in the fall when you're reflecting back on how the budget went. And so you can see our ending fund balance history, and the reason why is if we were looking at that trend coming down, we probably could have stopped our crisis in 2022 a little bit earlier. And you can see the progress we've made with it showing up, looking much better. One thing I will say is I do not think we will hit that 2026 forecast for ending fund balance. And the reason has to do with some deferred revenues. I thought we were gonna get a little bit of extra money in this year and then have some less money next year. I think the money's gonna come in next year for high cost stability fund and some tax receipts we're getting. And so it won't affect our budget for next year, but I do not believe we will hit that number. But it won't affect our budget for next year. We're just getting paid in a different fiscal year. So, but a good slide, important slide, and I think you can really see the progress we've made there. And I probably should have started with this, but for the folks watching at home, the blue bars are the fund balance over the past. That's our actual fund balance over a 15-year period. The orange line is fund balance as a percentage of our revenue. And so there are two different measures of a similar idea. But I think that's important to know what those are about. Looking ahead, again, the local option is huge. The state school fund getting locked in, there was concerns that the legislature was going to reduce the state school fund as some financial challenges hit. And so that's good that that's remained firm. And relative to districts around us, we have relatively few reductions. And so we do have some we'll talk about tonight, but we're feeling quite fortunate to be sitting where we are. Some challenges, we'll actually look at some grant amounts that I think will make clear what that looks like. Those flat funding in a grant is a reduction because costs go up and the revenue stays the same. That means we can do less with the grant. And we talked quite a bit about enrollment and PERS rates in our meeting in April, and those are both challenges. PERS rate being the unknown challenge, and we'll see what that looks like, and I'll keep the board apprised of that as we go forward. So general fund revenue assumptions. And by the way, just stop me if you have questions. I'm just going through this. We've talked about a lot of this before, so I'm going kind of quickly, but if you have questions, don't hesitate to jump in, please. Enrollment is based on this current year's ADMW, which is our actual weighted enrollment. And the reason we're basing it on that is next school year, every school year, we get either the higher enrollment, we get funded on a per student basis on either the higher number of current year enrollment or the prior year enrollment. So for 26-27, we're basing it on the prior year, which is this current year. And so that's an important assumption. State school fund, 11.4 billion, which is locked in, and the levy producing just over $7 million. And so here's what that looks like in terms of the revenue projections. There's two places here, the whole budget document and most of this slide deck for 25-26 has adopted budget numbers. On this slide and on the corresponding expenditure side, I'm showing projected. It's just a little bit different look at what it looks like. And so you can see that this year our operating revenue is expected to grow by 5.98%, but next year only 2.64%. That has to do with those deferred revenues. When you take some money out of this year, that was really next year's money that I thought we were going to get early, and move it to next year, that brings that more in line. It lowers the 5.98% down and raises up to 2.64%, and those become a little bit more aligned. But that's where you can see those deferred revenues showing up in the slide deck, and you can see a healthy ending fund balance there going in the right direction. General fund expenditures. This is one of the budget years that we're not negotiating with anybody, so we know what we're paying our employees. And just as a quick shout out to our employees, Dr. Downs talked about the relationships we have one of the most important relationships with our employee unions and our licensed association and the classified association. We have great relationships with them, so even though it's nice to know what we're paying them and not be bargaining right now, we have a totally different bargaining scene than most districts do, and so the way that goes, we're really fortunate about that. In addition to that, Senate Bill 849 gave us one-time PERS relief, meaning one time the whole biennium, so that will save us about $700,000 in PERS costs this year. That will be part of our PERS issue going forward next year. I think there's a smaller second pot of one-time PERS relief, which might be second-time PERS relief, might be a better way to call it. But it won't be that large, so that's part of our challenge going forward, but we've built that in for this year. We've talked, it seems like every year, about our liability and property insurance increasing substantially. This year, they're expecting another 18% increase. Last year, when we got an increase of about the same size, regardless of whether we got the increase or not, we took a really good look at our insurance deductibles. And we did we looked over several years of what we claimed against our property, how much we paid for deductibles, what our total cost of insurance was, and how much it cost to lower those deductibles. And we had some deductibles that were frankly too low, and by raising those deductibles, we saved quite a bit of money in insurance. And also, when you raise those deductibles, if you raise the deductible to $2,500 and you have a $2,500 piece of equipment that you're insuring, that just comes off the schedule altogether. So not only do you save in premium, you reduce the amount you're insuring a little bit. We didn't have a lot of that, but a little bit of that, it all helps. So the good news is we absorbed a good percentage of that 18% in premium savings last year, but we're going to get hit with it again. But I did think it was important to share that. We looked into that.
Gary, question on, you see all those commercials on the personal level for bundling and saving on insurance. Just from a standpoint of, obviously, school-based insurance with the cost going up, like, there are anything that we should be doing differently and continuing to manage those premiums? Is there options for bundling multiple schools together to get a reduction?
That's a great question. In fact, we actually do that. We work through an insurance cooperative called PACE, which involves virtually every district in the state. I think there's a couple big ones that self-insure outside of it. And so we actually get really good rates for our insurance. And then we have an insurance agent who's always searching for better rates for us on a variety of smaller policies we have. So for example, the cyber insurance policy we get through PACE is not as robust as we would like. So we go out to the secondary market, and so we have an insurance agent who's constantly hunting that down and giving us advice, and they help us with the deductibles thing, for example, too. So they're always looking for ways to try to save us money, and we do look around at a lot of different policy options before we get multiple bids, look at multiple policies. We do spend a lot of time working through that, and so but PACE offers good rates to us for what we have to insure. We didn't have $250 million in profit.
Yeah.
And we had a claim that was over $1 million year before last, which was part of our ride last year. And then the other claims statewide from a variety of different issues have just raised the cost of insurance.
Yeah. I would think $1 million claim doesn't feel super out of the ballpark for given kind of the size of what is insured. I don't know, it's kind of the average claim for work claims generally,
I don't know what the average claim is. I do know that PACE got hit by a lot of substantial claims because of that ice storm, and then they had wildfires before that, and they had roof collapses because of snow before that. There's just been a lot of big claims. The other thing is that insurance is really a nationwide for any secondary insurance things, and so hurricanes in Florida affect insurance rates in Oregon, and it's a real challenge. In fact, there's places in the U.S. where the government had to step in and subsidize people couldn't even get insurance to cover their homes.
Right.
But it's proven to be a real challenge with insurance. So similar staffing to last year, we'll actually look at what that is, and there will be some minor reallocations. There always are to follow the student population, and we're lucky that our minor reductions are largely through attrition. We really had almost no layoffs, so I looked it up. So here's our expenditure projection. And again, this looks at projected expenditures in 25-26, not adopted budget expenditures, and that lists a little bit differently. A couple anomalies on this page that I think are worth talking about. I think the biggest is why would supplies and materials go up by 24%, almost 24%, and capital outlay go down by 95%. And there's actually a kind of a technical reason for that. So we have to follow standards from the Government Accounting Standards Board, GASB. And one of the things we have to do is we have to take certain software subscriptions we have, and we're no longer allowed to just pay for them at $20,000 a year or whatever we pay for them. We have to turn them into what's called a subscription-based instructional technology arrangement, or if they meet certain criteria, they fall into that category. If we do, we have to treat them like a lease. And the rationale behind this is if you're going to use software over a number of years, and somebody's looking at your balance sheet, they would just look like you're spending. It doesn't show the future liability of the cost of the software. And so in order to show the future cost of the software, we have to treat them like a lease. So we pay principal and interest on those, and we have to move them into the capital outlay. But when we budgeted in 25-26 in capital outlay, we had directors and people like Assistant Superintendent Carroll, who looked at their budget for software and it said principal, interest. And it didn't break down what was for what software, and made it really challenging to manage budget. So this year we decided to budget for those in purchase service and supplies and materials, which is where they'll actually buy it. And then we'll journal entry that money to capital outlay when we close our books. It's fine from an accounting standpoint. And it just makes a lot more sense from a managing the budget. So it might look a little bit wonky on paper, but we think internally it will work much better. So what you're going to see is a couple $100,000 in actuals move to capital outlay, and a couple $100,000 in supplies and materials.
What about the other objects that went from 11, 13% down to less than 1%?
The actual projected amount isn't that much different.
Yeah, the actual projected amount isn't that much different.
That's true.
That's right. That's it.
So
Is it percentage?
that also has to do with the principal and interest, because that's the principal and interest actually will get charged to other objects. Code 610 and 620, which is the 600 funds. And then it will be offset with an entry in proceeds to, like it's a loan, and then it will be expensed to capital outlay. So both of those are actually impacted by that.
By the software.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's an interesting, it's a complex accounting arrangement that honestly, we don't get much benefit for. The people who benefit from it are people who might want to buy bonds from us in the future because they get a more holistic look at our financial situation. Any other questions on expenditures? So here's just a summary look at it. And this is the adopted budget this year in 25-26, that's how it's projected. You get a sense of the size of the budget. We talked about transfers out of the general fund. These transfers have increased a little bit this year. Nutrition services went up by a little over $100,000. That's because we've had a grant for the past few years, a supply chain assistance grant, and that grant gave us just about $100,000 a year, and that grant is going away and not looking like it's going to return. And so that was left over from the pandemic era funds. Our contribution to athletics has actually gone down. They've done a good job managing their budget over there. They built a little reserve, little ending fund balance that they'll carry forward, and so we were able to reduce that contribution. And we increased our curriculum and technology fund and our turf replacement fund. This was all part of our plan. With curriculum and technology, we had a 10-year budget in the bond we took out in 2016, and it's 2026, and so we have largely expended those dollars for curriculum. And so what we started to do is set money aside a few years ago. We started putting money in an account so we could build up a reserve And have the money, and have the money in as a line item in our budget. We've increased that by $100,000 each year. So we not only build up a fund, but build up a sustainable path to pay for that. And then same idea with turf field replacement. One of the great things about the new high school is we have lots of turf fields. One of the challenging things about the new high school is we got lots of turf fields. And they're all gonna come due at roughly the same time. The first one will obviously be the stadium at the middle school and that turf. But then we've got the stadium turf and 2 other turf fields, plus a softball field and a baseball field. And so those infields will likely have to be done on the softball and baseball field. And then 3 more full-size fields at about $1 million a piece. We want to just kind of keep building a reserve for this. It could be paid out of a future bond, but we can't get caught flat footage. And we don't know if we'll go for a bond or not. So that's what that's all about.
So, quick question, when we started, so for nutrition services, there was kind of a pre-pandemic or pandemic contribution that ran out, if I heard what you said correctly. So these transfers here represent really money that we're moving in to as kind of a contingency for costs in those categories, right? Versus that $100,000 that you kind of mentioned that ran out. How do we, is that coming out of then a contingency fund that we then pick up that additional expense?
No, that's a great question. So this is a transfer. Districts that look like Sherwood in terms of demographics, in terms of free and reduced meals. And what it costs to run our program, we can't run a program and break even. It's not possible. We're getting closer, we're moving towards it, but so we have to transfer funds from the general fund to support nutrition
To run the basic.
run the basic program.
So in those cases, when then we also lose state or government funding, is that then more money out of our contingency balance to cover that as well then, or where's that?
Yes, it's really, it's a transfer, but yes, if we didn't have to make that, we would add $100,000 to our contingency balance. Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. But it's set up a little bit different from a budget standpoint, but yes, it's a true cost to the general fund. And there is talk in the legislature, there's only a few school districts in Oregon that don't have free and reduced lunch for all students. We're one of them. And there is some talk in the legislature of making that happen. And that would change this number for the better. Not only would it feed all of our kids, but when your participation rates go up. For example, in some of our smaller elementary schools, there's no way to run the kitchen with only 1 person. But they don't generate enough revenue to pay for 2, because if somebody has to go back and grab something out of the kitchen, you just can't leave all that unattended, and you can't. So, but if we served more kids lunch there, and our labor costs didn't increase, our margin would improve, and we would shrink that down. So that's a possibility for us in the future that would not only be good for our kids, but good for the bottom line. More importantly, good for kids, because there are a lot of students who just won't accept free and reduced lunch. It's just there's a stigma to it, and it's proven out by research. So, significant amount of money to these transfers. You know, one thing about these transfers are also that these are general fund dollars going in, and so the board could at any time pull these funds out of these funds and use them for operating funds. So they're not locked in there forever. So if we needed the money for any reason that was more important than these things, that is an option also. So that's good news. But this is another form of reserve.
Okay.
Not the nutrition services and the athletics, but those are consumed in operating the program. So here's where we talked about our grant revenue being flat funded and the impact on this. And so these are our 6 largest grants. 5 largest grants. The top 3 are state grants, the bottom 2 are federal grants. But I think the way to really look at this slide and understand it is to look at in 24-25, we received $7,013,000 in funds from those grants. In 26-27, we're expected to receive $7,032,000, almost exactly flat funded over a 2-year period. And when your costs increase by 5-6% a year, that acts as a reduction, and that pushes things back to the general fund, or it's things we just no longer do. And it's mostly pushing things back to the general fund, but there are some things out of there that will be services we don't offer. And things that were kind of nice to have, but we just don't do anymore. That's a significant impact.
And yeah, real quickly, just flip back on this title one. I mean, we've got a 19-point swing from 25 to 26, and then literally kind of 100% swing from 26 to 27. What's the driver behind that context at all?
I'm 100% swing.
Well, so from 4%, I guess it's double. I was from 4 to 8.4. There,
So,
maybe it's just a percentage term, not as much, but.
I believe the swing there is because the 24, 25, and 25, 26 doesn't have Title IV in it. And so you're allowed to roll your Title IV into your Title I funds, which allows us to use it a little bit differently. And so we did it in 23, 24, and then had it in 26, 27. And so you do that on the state end, and so like fiscal doesn't always, they can account for it differently, and it doesn't do any harm to the budget or anything like that. But the Title IV funds are so limited that it's not gonna swing.
Okay, so it's recording.
so when I pulled up Fund 229, it was Title I. Those Title IV funds were rolled in there. So yeah, that makes sense. And they are. So that changes a little bit, but, and that's been a little bit of volatile in just in the information we were getting. We've had a hard time finding out what we were actually gonna get for those federal grants. And the other thing too that makes it a little bit wonky is that sometimes we have a carryover in a grant where you spend a little bit less money in one year and you carry it over to the following year, and that makes the numbers. You're comparing actuals to budget. Right. So here's our appropriations summary. This is actually the level at which the budget committee approves and adopts the budget. I think for me, the thing on this page that is maybe the most interesting, we'll see the bottom line total of FTE in a minute, but you can see that we've actually, even though our grants have gone down, we've got a few more people in grants than we did in fiscal year 25. And part of that is because we moved people in and out of grants based on who could charge to the high cost disability fund. If you're funded by a grant, you can't be charged with like a high cost disability fund. So we tried to move people into those grants who couldn't charge to that grant, and some of those were lower cost employees, and so it just balanced out a little bit differently. That was a little bit counterintuitive, and I had to look into why that was what was happening with that. And when we look on the bottom line, unfortunately, our screen is blocked, but we have about 3 less employees. Thank you. We have about 3 less employees this year than we had last year. Yeah, I'm going to show you in a second reductions of about 8 teachers. Or 8 staff members, and part of that's because after the budget passed last year, you've heard us talking about special education, and we hired some staff to reduce class sizes, and we hired some staff that helped with special education after the budget passed last year. So it looks like we're only reducing 3, but from our actual level of service, we're reducing more than that. So that takes me on to our reductions, and I'll walk through these fairly quickly. I think it's worth noting that the top almost 2/3 of this are cuts to the district office. And we really tried to stay away from schools in our reductions to the fullest extent possible, and away from people to the fullest extent possible. We tried to look at what things that we don't need to purchase anymore. And so that's always challenging when 85% of your budget is people and 15% is electricity, and some of the 15% of it is everything else, and you got things like electricity and water, and pretty hard to cut those things. Yeah, I tried to cut the water, but they wouldn't let me. So then when we get down to the people reductions, we have a retirement in our TAG Media Center COSA, who's going to work back 0.3 and run our media centers. And then we're excited about what's happening with TAG. As Dr. Downs alluded to earlier, we've been building out a multi-tiered system of support for many years. And really what that is to make things systematic, like support for students. And so for the last few years, we've worked out in building the intervention side, students who are below grade level, who've been struggling. And you can see that in things like attendance teams and ninth grade on track teams and high dosage tutoring and some of those things on students who were struggling. And now that we've built that infrastructure out, the same person who did a lot of the work to build that out is excited to build out those systems now in TAG. And so we're really excited. This is the direction we were kind of going either way. And we're excited to do that work. And the person, our MTSS coordinator, is excited to take that work on. So we're excited about that. And we're really excited to have our media center host to stay and still have some input into the TAG program, but mainly run our media center. She's a licensed librarian, which is really helpful in that. Makes things pretty slick. We've got a custodial retirement. It's going to work back half time. This is perfect for us because when we don't have shortages of custodians, this person can be off doing his thing. And times a year when we do have shortages of custodians, he can come back and plug in. It'll work great for us. We had 3 temporary elementary teachers that we hired for class size reduction. We are currently watching our enrollment. We talked about it this morning. We talk about it every Monday morning. And as depending on how our ending fund balance goes and how our enrollment goes, we would love to hire back some of those teachers. And the ability to lower class sizes, and we'll continue to watch that. We had some teachers who requested leave or reductions for a year, so we were able to absorb those. We had a lunch monitor at SMS, which that is actually a true layoff. We had our academic skills center teacher retire, one of the 2 retire at the high school. And then we had a couple of SPED instructional assistants who were actually temporary, who the students that they worked with are now in out-of-district placements, and so they're not attending our district anymore. And so those folks have been we've let them know that there's other opportunities to work in special education, and we welcome them back if they want to come back. So we're feeling pretty fortunate that although this list will certainly be felt by people compared to what other districts are dealing with, we're feeling really fortunate. And we were able to take a lot of these restrictions and enough to lay off our staff, which is also a really nice, nice piece. Any questions about this?
In the case of, with, you know, where there was, you know, the one layoff we did have and some of the instructional assistant productions there. That doesn't even show the fully burdened value of the salary, right? That's a pretty conservative estimate where the factor into the benefits.
That does factor in the benefits, but it's on an average basis, so we don't point the exact person and say this is what they. We just pick an average, so average instructional assistant salary. Depending on it, so you can see it goes from 0.5 to 0.8 and the cost more than doubles. And we only go up,
Okay.
that's because they all of a sudden qualify for benefits with 0.8 and they don't at 0.5.
Two quick questions. I think we talked about it already, but the nurse savings, this is just a contractual change, right? This is that's where we're getting that save from. Is that right?
Yes, we just found we had more days in our nurses' calendars than we needed, and they came back. They could come back a week later and still get all of their work completed to be ready for the start of school, and so that was not a huge savings, but it's also another fact.
And then my second question is on the TAG. I know we're re-envisioning that program, but on the budget, it looks like it's a kind of like 52% or something like that. So it looks like a big reduction, but is that just really because we're reimagining how we're going to approach TAG? Is that a fair statement?
I think that's a fair statement, and also the person who's taking on the duties spent the last couple of years building out the intervention side of the MTSS program, and that is up and running, and so she's using that extra capacity of not doing that work anymore to then take on the enrichment and extension side. And I think the great thing about it is we want TAG to become something that is not dependent upon a person in the classroom, but dependent upon a system. And we've been moving in that direction, but the MTSS system is an evidence-based strategy of making that happen. And so that's what we'll work on. And I'm really excited about it. It's something we've been working on for a number of years, and Marlene and the teaching and learning team have done a great job of rolling it out. It takes many years to implement, but when you read the research on an MTSS program, the outcomes are very, very good. That's why we chose to do it as centerpiece of our strategic plan.
Good, yeah, that's sense.
Okay, I'm gonna move quickly because we're a little short on time here. I apologize for that. These are the levy rates. The permanent rate is set by the state. We can't do anything about that. The local option levy, the voters approved at $1.50 per thousand, and so that we will levy. And then the general obligation bond levy, that is not done in a rate, but in a fixed amount, and that is done to pay off our bonds. And so I gave a little bit of information about the calculation, how it was done there. And I think people will see the percentage, but they may go down again this year. We talked about that in the other meeting about how the actual rate has come down, and I think it will come down again. We have a budget book that went out, and people want to go through that, have a discussion about that. Have any questions about that? I'd take those questions now if anybody has any.
Gary, I guess one quick question, we talked a little bit in some of the previews, just about the contingencies. Fund as far as kind of what we're trying to go to, the open left the discussion with kind of 8% target. And then in the general fund, the global. That's something we're continuing to march to. Are there cases where, given just the rising costs, you need to continue to kind of rethink how we're getting to that point? In context of what we're able to actually put away versus what we need right now.
You know, that's really the dilemma is, you know, we've got some challenging times potentially coming in 27, 28 with the PERS. The unknown PERS increase out there that could cost us significantly. And at the same time, you've got class sizes today that are larger than we're comfortable with in certain spots. They're great in some spots and there are certain pockets. And so, you know, the challenge is, do you deal with those hot spots now and potentially make things worse for the district with an unknown PERS increase, or do you save the money now? And that's the dilemma. And so when the board set a policy of an 8% reserve, there was no official timeline set. There was one proposed by the superintendent at that time with a rough outline to get there. And we're actually ahead of that plan. Or at least on that plan, depending on how the mission fund balance rolls out. And so I think that's a discussion the board and the budget committee will need to continue to have is where is that line? And
Yeah, and I think those are always really ongoing conversations. I feel like, especially leading up to the school year starting, we're talking all the time about what class sizes look like and if there's any possibility to blend a class, but it's just not as easy as, you know, parents at home think. Like, you know, I have an elementary kid, I don't want her to be in a huge class, and I might think it sounds super easy to have fourth and fifth graders together, but I also don't really know what those kids need to be learning each year, and what that curriculum looks like, and so sometimes it's just not as easy as we think. Or we add a teacher and it makes classes so small that it's just unreasonable to sustain that. But we do have those conversations all the time, and we probably don't always get it right. I know we're always trying to get it right, and we're always trying to be really cautious to not spend where we just can't do it.
And that goes to where I mentioned that, you know, we're looking at class sizes all the time, and we'd love to hire back some of those elementary teachers, but we also don't want to do it until we see that our enrollment actually warrants it. Because our elementary enrollment typically grows about 200 kids between, we started registration for next year, and we'll typically grow by about 200 kids from May of this year to August of next year. And so we got to see how many that actually is. We're making that decision.
We tend to be conservative in how we approach this stuff. I think that one thing that we've done really well is we wait to know that we can really support something until we incorporate it in the budget. And, you know, you've seen districts in surrounding areas have to, you know, lay off teachers mid-year or make some pretty painful mid-year cuts that are very disruptive. And we've been pretty successful in so that we don't have to do things like that. Gary's been really good about acting early, so we don't have to do that stuff.
I guess we moved into the discussion phase of the agenda. Any other comments or thoughts?
I guess the last question that I had really, obviously provide a lot of transparency in the budget book. That you can provide is super helpful, and I will say, this is my second term. On the financial committee here, and the visibility and transparency is not what I said is fantastic. The part two is probably where a lot of districts should be going, so thank you for that. In looking at just the overall kind of count analysis, are there accounts where you're concerned, just the lumpy nature maybe of either projections or spend create some risk that we need to be thinking about? I don't know if it's in whether it be salaries or whether it be, other kind of special funds. Is there areas that just from in your lens, kind of looking at on an account level detail that you say, yeah, this is something we need to be doing kind of brace for. Think about.
I think one is just in the general fund, thinking about the first question and what that's going to do, because when you're 85% salary and benefits, you start adding percentages onto that salary and it goes up pretty fast. So that's something we'll have to watch. Something we haven't talked about as much that you can see it in the budget that it's an ongoing capital expense in that there's just a lot to maintain the school buildings we have, and so we have HVAC needs, and we have siding replacement needs, and we have turf replacement needs, and instructional materials, and there's all of these things. And the state of Oregon does not really provide a revenue source for those. The only revenue source we get for those is the construction excise tax. And it was never intended to cover all of our capital costs. And so we've done a good job. We still have $80,000 left in the 2006 bond that we could spend on that bond question. So we've done a good job of saving our money and being prudent. But we are on a course where over time we will deplete those funds. We're saving for curriculum technology and we're saving for turf fields, but we're going to have to watch that carefully. We're not in bad shape, but it's not an endless supply of capital funds without either going for a bond or pulling more out of the general fund or going without.
But even that conversation, we're in really good shape.
Yes.
With our facilities, with the way we've maintained what we have. This is just us looking forward and making sure we're planning appropriate. And a lot of the reserves that we talked about earlier today, those are things that are easy to just kick the can down the road and to not put money aside, and then all of a sudden it's 10 years from now and we have to replace who knows how many millions of dollars of turf fields, and we don't have the money in the bank for it. These types of conversations make sure that when we get to that point, we actually do have the money to meet those payments, and so we need to take a similar approach to the rest of the district.
So just because we didn't discuss it specifically today, but it's definitely in the budget, our rising costs on special education, right? So like I think I know the answer already, because we discussed it, but kind of like our long-term strategy, near-term strategy, like what are we doing to try to buffer this problem, because our costs are exceeding what we're getting reimbursed by the state. Obviously, the hopeful long-term answer is the state will, fund those mandates that they give us and cover costs, but that's not currently happening. So what's our near-term, long-term strategy?
So our near-term strategy is, for one, we're doing everything we can to maximize what we do get out of the high cost facility fund. And it's a really complicated process. I mean, we have to look at every bus trip that kids take who ride on special education. But we got to get down to that level of detail. And so making sure that everyone who has anything to do with the high cost students, we can get reimbursed for their time. That even includes our directors at the district office level. We've taken them out of grants so that they can charge time they spend working with those students for the high cost disability grants. We're trying to maximize the revenue side. Erin Gonzalez is doing a great job of looking at she's done a great job with that. I haven't done anything to say it's her and her team. I just said, yeah, that's a great idea. And they've also done a great job, that team. You know, when I didn't talk about it in detail on the reduction slide, but one of the reductions was we've been hiring an occupational therapist from the Northwest Regional ESD. And we could get a better deal by hiring one through an agency, and we also have more operational control because we'll actually be able to supervise the person, and so we'll save $30,000. And so we're looking at it from all those directions. We're trying to combine things together whenever we can, but it's a challenge because those students need and deserve the services. And we're committed to providing them, and they're required even if we didn't. And so it's a challenge, and what we're hopeful is if we get really good at claiming, we are really good at claiming on a high cost disability fund. And if the state addresses that issue, we'll get a pretty significant increase in revenue. So that's kind of our midterm hope.
Then related to that, one thing that came up in our breakout session was just now that we have, from an accountability standpoint, from a budget standpoint, good processes and procedures in place, pretty good reporting in place on a year-to-year basis. Looking ahead, spending some time talking about the link between the revenues that are coming in and some of the conversations we have in here. It can be a little bit, rightfully confusing where we see revenue going up every year, but then we're also always talking about cuts and budget reductions and budget balancing. And, there are really good reasons for that, but just helping people to understand, like, what do we control? What do we not control? What decisions do we get to make? What decisions are made for us? And helping to really clearly talk about the link between where the revenue that is coming in and where that revenue is going is, something that we're gonna work on over the next few years.
There's a long way to the next level.
Next one.
I know I'm not running this meeting, but I figured I might try to get us back on track here since our next meeting is starting for a moment. There isn't any public testimony tonight, correct?
Correct.
And I don't know that there's any deliberation, right? So I think at this point, we just need to call for action items. Not me.
So then I guess, with the conclusion of deliberation. I'm gonna ask for a motion that we approve the proposed budget for 26-27. Means that the budget committee approved the proposed budget as submitted by the superintendent. With no changes, I believe.
I'll move that the budget committee approve the proposed budget for 2026-27 as submitted by the superintendent.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
And then I will ask for a motion to approve the 26-27 levy of the district's permanent rate of 4.8123 per $1,000 of assessed value. I would like to do a vote after each of those, but them all.
You can do all, in fact, first we make the budget and read it.
Okay, so I'll continue then. Move to approve the local option levy for $1.50 per $1,000 of assessed value. And move to approve the levy amount of $18,758,974 for debt service.
Reread that one.
Move to approve the levy amount of $18,758,974 for debt service.
And I think since you made the motion for all those, we can just second them. I don't think I need a motion.
Second.
Awesome. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I don't think we need to call for opposed. I don't think there are any opposed. And you can say motion carries.
Motion carries.
There we go. All right, we had a few tentative meetings on the schedule in case we needed to get back together to meet, but it doesn't sound like we need to do any of those. So congratulations to the entire team for getting through all of that so easily, mostly you, Mr. Bennett. And the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all for your time. I appreciate your time.